have two celebrity guests with me. I've got Mr. J Ball, friend of the show, Flotek CEO, founder. And then I have Mr. Dave Rogers, founder of Bionic Technology Limited. Between them, I think we're looking at nearly 20 acquisitions of businesses. And if I add my figure into there, it's nearly 20 acquisitions. Keen to get into it with you both today, talking about kind of M&A. It's a big topic. Everyone's kind of talking about it. And for me, I think there's a lot of misconceptions in terms of what people think, be it the seller who owns a business and it's a personal thing, right? And you've built it, you love it, and to put a value on it can be problematic in the market. Currently seeing where a founder may say, this is my business, I've run it for 20 years, I need to retire on the back of it, this is all. And the reality is when perhaps you lift the bonnet up, it's not quite in that position. And then how you deliver that news, which I'm sure both of you have done previously. You both sold businesses as well. You both, funnily enough, and this is quite interesting, exited businesses, bought the villa in Cyprus, moved to Cyprus or holiday Cyprus, and then gone, no, we want to get back into it. And then to anyone watching, we were catching up offline, and I think you two live like 5 minutes away from each other in Cyprus. So potentially after this, I don't live in Cyprus, funnily enough. I can get.
I'd invite you, bro. You can say no.
Well, I'm not house trained, unfortunately. So kind of kicking it off, and I'll start with you, Jay, just because you're near the tram line. From a seller's point of view, when you sold your first business, what was the due diligence you went through? Because you'll have been, 22, 23?
So 21 when I set up the business. So I was 34 when I started.
34. So how did you go into that? When you're looking back now with your lens of 14, 15 acquisitions, J Boo, 34, first ever sale. When you reflect on that, what are you happy? Do you think you would have done differently? What was your sort of experience on that? Were you actively looking to sell? Was it kind of offer too good to be true? What was the sort of scenario in there for you?
Lots of strategies. Look, we weren't looking to sell at that point. We were looking to actually raise investment to acquire another business. And the advisor that we went to said to us, look, while we go out,
Why did you go to an advisor?
I always think, look, depending on the size of your business, I think you should be advised, because if it's your first time doing this sort of thing, you just don't know what you don't know. And the advisors are brilliant. In fact, my FD was my advisor at the time. So, I met a great person from that as well. So I'm sure he's listening and watching this. And I think having an advisor who's been there, done it, understands it, knows what to look for is just really, really important. And yes, you pay hefty fees for that. And, I still remember the exact cost. But what that actually made in value for our business was honestly worth probably 10 times what that cost was. So it was totally worth it on that point of view.
Well, sometimes, and I bet you see it, Dave, you have businesses, they'll try and manage the process themselves and not get that external resource. And kind of to your point, if you'd have just done that yourself, it could have maybe impacted the value.
Yeah, we bought businesses from businesses that aren't represented, and we bought businesses that are. Sometimes advisors can be a great thing. Sometimes they can be a complete hindrance. Sometimes they can get in the way of the deal, and they can not let the seller see what is important, and it's all about the money and not the deal.
This is interesting there, Dave. You've kind of gone, totally agree. Where could that challenge be with an advisor? How does it work? In theory, if I'm a leaseholder and MSP and I'm going to an expert, I'm expecting them to fully represent me and speak to the benefit of me.
Yeah, my experiences have seen it whereby they're almost justifying their reason for being there. So they'll overcomplicate, which is already a complicated process, and just slow the whole thing down to the point where I've seen them drop out of bed as a result of it. So walk away. So not everyone who says they're a great advisor is a great advisor as well, by the way. And it's so what is their interest in that business? So it swings around, but I totally agree. You should have an advisor. I would call in an advisor at the point of exit. We did. It's just getting the right ones to make sure the transaction actually goes through. You've got to be very clear with your instruction, what you want from your advisor. Otherwise, they'll just take over and run with it. And I seem to be,
How fun was that? So when you both first exited your businesses, how intensive was that period of time? Are we talking, you got right up in the long hours waiting to go through, you still working in the business and trying to grow it? How did you balance that? Just for me, as a Philistine, that feels incredibly stressful, where there's potentially an exit with hopefully some nice money. You've got the people that you're loyal to and you grow in your business, and mentally as entrepreneurs, you'll probably grow. And does that relationship change how you manage it? Because you're kind of thinking, I might not be here in a month, or I might be here in a month on a earn out, which we'll touch on.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that sort of process of going through that where you were required? Is it, I'm going to ask you others,
right. So I've ate twice. The first time was I sold out, my two partners stayed in. And so it was like an equity purchase of my shares. That was actually quite smooth. We came to an agreement pretty quickly in terms of the value. And because there was no one else involved, that was quite straightforward. They purchased my shares. We agreed the terms and conditions of it, worked out my period of non-compete, and off I went. It was all very, very amicable. Second time, the large one with the sale of Excel through to with Waymet was, it was quite, it's stressful because there's just so many people involved in that process. I had a board of directors. I wasn't the major shareholder in that business, so I wasn't calling the shots necessarily, and I found that very frustrating because I've got other people making final decisions where I wouldn't necessarily have agreed with them. So that, because it wasn't in my total control, I found that incredibly stressful.
so that's a nice in out.
Yeah,
I don't know, you're here. There's an element you're not in control, are you? It's there's certain bits of external.
I think you're hinting at I am a control freak, right? And yeah,
Correct.
and so I found it not this. I found it the most stressful situation in my entire life. So I remember it was probably an 8-month process of meeting different buyers. It was then doing the due diligence. It was then coming down to an earn out agreement, and it was coming down to, that legal period, and you're trying to run the business at the same time as you're actually trying to sell the business. So, and the thing is, you have to make sure that the numbers are consistent, because if the numbers start dropping or peaking, then it creates worry, concern, and, why are the numbers down? Why are they up? What's the reason for it? So you've got to keep a consistent growth period. And that's really hard when your entire focus is on selling your business and not actually growing your business. And so doing those two things were 18, 22-hour days every single day. I remember by the end of the process, I'd lost probably a stone and a half of weight. I was stressed on my eyeballs. My family were all saying to me, Jay, why are you so stressed? And I couldn't tell them because I couldn't say we're selling our business, right? Because you just can't let that get out. And so most stressful situation I've ever done personally.
And does that help you both, having been through that, taking your second time, first time there, when you're looking at acquisition, speaking to a founder, you understand what's involved emotionally, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's
You can empathize. And I think we tend to find when we come up against other people who are bidding on the same business that we are, the difference quite often is I'm an entrepreneur. The person that is generally also bidding may not be an entrepreneur and is just a CEO or an M&A director who's never really run a business and doesn't understand the emotional impact that it's having on them, their family, their children, their life, and everything else. And so when you can empathize and understand how they're feeling, there's a different connection. And so I would say the reason we've won a lot of our acquisition opportunities isn't because we always go in with the biggest and the best prize, but it's actually because we understand what's important to them and we can empathize with it. And I'd imagine, knowing Dave a short time, I can imagine he's very, very similar as well.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. It's the sales process, right?
100%.
Right, well, you tackle the sales process in exactly the same way, right? You've got to be a better listener than you are a talker.
Yep, I agree.
And how important when you're looking at a business, and is because we've seen in the market some fantastic acquisitions, mergers, however you want to call it, but it's really had its skill sets about business. Yeah. So we see it through install the ISP through the 20SP. So you might have a business now saying, right, we don't
historically do security. But rather than pulling up that, we want to buy a, security person with that skill set. And it puts off with lots of customers will cost south, sort of kind of skill set. There's other partners or businesses, and I mentioned about communication people by a customer base, will then use to contact the customers, cross-selling them, and they'll use that as acquisition of customers rather than sort of skill set within the business and people. And then you've got a bit intelligent culture. So one of the things we were talking about, and I'll pick up with you on this, is when you're acquiring the business, you're also acquiring the capability of it, the technical perspective, and the books, but also the people that come with that business. What sort of, I started starting your back to the scene where people don't take allowances for the League of the People, or they don't take allowances for citizens, or whatever. What sort of things do you pull out and roll up in their business? Is it, or does it bother you, the people? Do you know that? It does bother me. It depends on why you're buying that business. The people is the really important part of it, from my point of view, because it's really difficult to find good staff, right? So part of that acquisition, actually, if it's a successful business, they've got successful people in them. So actually, that the people involved in it are a key ingredient as to why you would purchase that business. But it can be really tricky, right? Because then you've got two heads of finances, you've got two heads of billing, you've got this synergy savings, as they call it, and it's how you deal with that element to it and how you manage that. So that's how did you do that? Because say, imagine with an acquisition, one of the challenges with it, you want to keep the people, or most of the people in the roles, because they add value. You assuming 9 times out of 10, if you buy a business and everyone left the next day, you're in a bit of a challenge. But there is those synergies. Is it? I mean, do you try and redeploy? Or how does that? Personally, we would try and keep the people within the business. And if there wasn't a role for them, you try and find another role for them, or let them grow into another role with them as the business grows. But it really is on a per instance basis, really. Sometimes it's inevitable, I guess, if it is.
Sometimes people might say it's not like business for me now, it's changed, it's bigger.
I preferred smaller business, and But I mean, I know I've seen stuff from you, Jay, where you've tried to keep as many people always. I don't think you've ever kind of done that sort of thing. Most people have stayed and added into the business, haven't they?
So I think as Dave said, you find your best people through acquisition, and it's really hard to find really good people. And so we've got some really good success stories, such as a receptionist on our first acquisition that is moving into an operations manager role for us. We've got people who have gone from a technician to our top sales person, right? So you find some really good people, but at the same time, whoever's that show, doesn't it as well? It does say that you're giving them a bastard. Also, on the downside of it is sometimes when you acquire a business, those people don't want to be in a fast-paced business. They don't want to be in a fast-growth business, and so sometimes it just doesn't fit. And so I think it's about just having those honest conversations. So we spend a lot of time with an acquisition, understanding the people. And generally, before we do the acquisition, and before we have that first meeting with the staff, I'll generally know, are they going to be here long term? What's their motivation? And I'll try and understand that in the deal and post.
Will either of you must ask this to you, Jay, and they would, if you were doing that due diligence on the people, it's a brilliant business, it's a great buys, great products, but the people, it's not a right fit. You've done the due diligence. Is that a block? Is that enough for you to have second thoughts?
Yes.
Serious consideration, so because from our point of view, we're trying to grow in that really strong culture planning, and you bring in the wrong set of people, it'll completely destabilize the whole thing, and I'm not prepared to risk the rest of the business just by bringing in one acquisition.
And I completely agree. I think we've sort of done it where we've had conversations and the financials stacked up brilliantly, but the cultures just did not. And so when you meet a business owner, if they're all about the money and they're all about what they're going to get from it, and you ask that question, how would you feel if I got rid of all the staff? And they go, I wouldn't care. To me, that's the sort of, you're seeing the true colors of that person.
That's one of the things that's out of, because I feel fortunate to be with you two, and as a
I guess, an employee, one of the things you think about are, does the owner make balances or incorporate their people into the sale of their business? Or is it you can do what you want with them. They've known me for 20 years. They all know the business. And, I don't care. Or if they start asking you, so if I'm working for you, you're selling and you're kind of saying to Jay, who's buying your business, your part later, I want to make sure Will's looked after. He's done this, he's done that. You as a acquirer, you want to hear those sort of things from an owner where they're showing that loyalty to their people.
Yeah, because look, you want to buy good businesses off good people, and you can very quickly see the true colours of a business owner within the first meeting. And so when we have our first acquisition meeting, I spend the first meeting just getting to know the business owner, getting to know the team, understanding the business. And very quickly, I'll know from that meeting, do they have a handle on the business? What are they like with their team? What's the culture like? Will it integrate into ours? And it doesn't matter how great the financials are. If I don't think it'll integrate, we stop.
That's similar for you in terms
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely. I think so. But it's funny because when we started Planet, a lot of the guys that joined us initially have been wanting to join us as a result of them being through an acquisition somewhere else and they're going really bad.
Yeah.
So they were badly treated, right? But they're great, experienced people. So actually we talk about it as a group openly about where Planet's going, what would happen at the event of a sale, just so that everybody understands what my motivation is, what their motivation is, and how we would play it at that point. And I think if you're open and honest about it, the staff will understand, especially the ones that have been burnt once or twice previously at other organizations. It's their lives. It's this stuff. It's as important for them as it is for us, right? So
yeah. One of the threats there mentioned in terms of potential homes, and one of the common things I do from my partners would be stuff crazy valuations of businesses where I owner, founder, reseller, and will value their business from years to think that their revenue. So if they're a £2 million business, their business is worth a minimum of £2 million and an earn out and no loss of things on top. I don't know if my two questions, and I'll start with Jay. And is that something you see? Number one, and number two, how can you, through conversation, evolve that from I'm worth £2 million to actually I understand where you're coming from in terms of I was a bit maybe unrealistic on valuation and working together, or is that a red flag?
It's difficult, right? Because we go back to advisors. There's certain advisors who will overvalue the business to get the instruction. And so straight away, you're on the back foot because you're telling them their business is worth half of what it's been valued at. So they think, oh, you're trying to get a great deal. And so quite often we've had it where we've said, look, the true value of your business is this. And they go, oh, we've been told double that. And you go, okay, well, look, I will say, go and see the market, go and have a chat with lots of people. And in a year's time, when, you still haven't sold it for the amount that you think, come back and have a chat, right? And the door's open. And we've had a couple of people come back a year or so later and go, not sort of tail between the legs, but just go, yeah, look, I've done my due diligence. You're quite right. The market is there. And a lot of people are living off past valuations. Comms companies aren't worth what they were 5 years ago. IT companies are worth more than they were 5 years ago. So, we're in a different way. And I think a lot of people are living on past valuations. Some people hear about like Focus, who had an amazing deal years ago, and they think, well, I must be worth the same multiple that they got. And it doesn't work like that. So it is hard to educate them and say,
it's very personal. Personal.
It's their baby.
Yeah.
From your side, if you're speaking to someone, so you may or may not be going through something that Jay recently gone through in terms of the announcements or efficiency. When you're having those conversations with a business owner, are you similar to Jay, or are there certain things if that objection comes in of I'm worth it, so do you kind of say, look, you go out and try,
Well, you can't listen. At the end of the day, it's worth what it's worth to you, right? And I'm not prepared to look at and paying ridiculous sums of money because it's just, I'll run the risk of devaluing the rest of my business as a result of it. So there is an education part to be played, and it depends in which stage. I've always found it depends on what stage you're talking to that potential seller.
Yeah.
Because if you're one of the first people they go and talk to, their valuation's up here, and then during the process of them talking to lots of people, it tends to sort of come to more of a normal level. So,
And we need to get them when they've been rejected a few times. You're thinking up a little. It's not in our position.
it's not often that you'll go in and talk to somebody straight away and they've got a realistic valuation that the business sees off the bat. But if they've got the right advice up front, hopefully they structured that sale over a number of years, right? So that they've thought about selling their business 2-3 years ago, and they've started to put their business in shape to sell. So they've got the right reporting in place, they've put the right product structure in place, the right financials in place. So when they come to it, it's almost packaged up and gone, there you go. And here's the pack, and we can look at it, and the transaction go a lot smoother. But it doesn't always.
And that's why it's good sometimes to have advisors, good advisors, your advisors, because they will tell them what they're real value. Yeah, but it's easy to get them. And so I think there's more bad advisors than are good.
How do you find a good advisor? Is it just word of mouth, or
Speak to people who have done a deal, who have done a deal and used somebody. We use Nike Corporate, who were fantastic through our process. They actually undervalue what we sold for. And I think they did that to sort of set a low expectation to get a deal. And I admire that. So actually what we've done is we've set our expectations here and we achieved here.
Instead of there, and then you've achieved her, and you're kind of
and kind of moving through that acquisition bit. And this is something that Jay, I know you've done well out of, and I'm sure you have with Properties in Cyprus, is the mechanism after the purchase where the CEOs, the key people, there's an earn out in place. And for my wife watching, an earn out is where if you sell a business, you agree to Jay or Dave that the business will hit this target, it will sell this, and the revenue will be steady, and there won't be kind of, I guess the wheels won't fall off in layman's terms. And in return for that, I would get a bonus that would be agreed at the point of sale, where it's a bit more money. And then for either of you two, it might be you want to keep that person on because you think they're a great employee, or it might just be naturally to go separate ways. So, I mean, how important to you is putting those processes in post the acquisition to try and...
Well, it's different for everyone as well. So for me, I don't usually with the person in Glassdoor Sammy business as well, his owners. Every owner, a bit of a reason so. So it's about trying to understand what they want to get out of the process. Is it because they got to a certain age and they feel like they want to retire? That's always a bit of a car crash. Never really works out that way. Or once you understand what their motivations are for selling it, you can build the structure of the deal around that, right? To suit them and to suit, if you can find a happy media, and that's where the best sales will be made.
no, that makes sense. And I know from there now, you personally, you put one in place for your first sale, and it worked really well. You held the field.
I had it out on my deal, and it was probably the most money I've ever made in a year. And so I'm a big fan of it, right? But they've got a really bad reputation. A lot of
Yeah, they do, yeah. It's because you're getting stitched up at the back end, that's why.
it's because people overthought it. So when they come to sell a business, they go, we can grow 30%. And you go, oh, right, okay, fantastic. Let's set it up with 30%.
Yeah.
And then you look back and they've only grown 4% in the last 3 years. So why are they going to go from 4% to 30%? And it's just unrealistic. And so everybody then, I guess,
Why would someone do that? Is it because they want the earnouts to be a higher figure? Because if the
Well, it's often set the other way as well. So it's often set by the buyer, trying not to pay what they want to pay for it. So they'll set it too high in terms of, of course we'll pay you X amount for your business based on a 30% jump on your revenue, and they never get the knowing they're never going to get it.
and suddenly people do look at that bottom number. And so, how you structure your payments and everything else, people will look at what's the overall I'm going to get. And if that overall is, you've got to grow by 10%, 20%, 30%, they see, I see that 30%, but the chances are they won't get it.
No.
But again, it depends. Like for me,
Can't impact the business. What can that impact it? So if someone's thinking the 30% and they're the earn out period is a year, and they're 6-7 months into that period, running
effectively the business still within Flotek or Planet, and they look at it, the projection, they're not going to hit it. Do people take the foot off the gas and go, I'm not going to hit this target, it's unrealistic?
How do you manage that? I mean, I'll kick with you first.
Never really through that. Never actually had that scenario personally. You know, when I sold out of Excel, I didn't have an earn out. We were paid up front. And that was the MO of the company that purchased us at that time.
And why would someone do that instead of, is that because they just wanted their strategy was, hey, you, it's ours, mate, and we're going to go and.
Yeah. Also, it's a way of, you know, in those scenarios, it depends if you want the individuals to stick around or not. So the acquisition of us was they wanted to remove all that top layer of none of the shareholders stayed, none of the top management stays. You know, part of the reason for paying what they did was because they knew they were going to get some recourse in the amount of money that was being, you know, salaries and stuff. So yeah, they were happy to let go that experience in order to recoup the money from a financial perspective.
How did that work for them? Getting all of that expertise on the top.
Say no comment.
So I'm going to say no comment. Slough says it all. Don't say no comment. I'm sure they thought it was brilliant.
It's always good to keep people there. And for you,
I mean, when your sales director was Mr. Blones, one of the businesses you acquired in North Wales, he wasn't sales director there, he's MD, but he's kind of, to Dave's point before, someone that you've seen skill set and ability and transitioned him.
With Zach and the whole change. And
Do you know what? The reason that worked is because we did an earn out with his business. And so before I gave him that sales rep role, we had a year of working with him, understand his motivations, because when you go through a deal process, people will say whatever you want to hear to get what they want, right? And actually in that year process of that earn out, you get to know that person. Can I work with them? You know, we bought businesses before where I thought this would be a great person on a business and realized we just can't work with it. It was a clash, right? And whereas with Wayne, we realized actually he'd add a lot of value to our business. And, you know, not just monetary, but bringing in the knowledge he's got, bringing in the technical knowledge he's got around the product that we now provide. So it does work as well.
So in terms of the kind of, it's very interesting with report. It's kind of it's a delicate subject. So we all know founders, entrepreneurs, when they sell their business, they have 100% the intention to retire and move to the others as laps and to play golf, and whenever they're to get back into the industry, they don't want to do that. And invariably, there's a non-compete where they can't to things. When that bid expires, almost at the same time, sometimes founders decide to actually, retirement's not for me. I want to come back in and I'm going to start my own business. So I was Flotek and now Flotek. That's not use that word. I'll tell you what, this is a bit, sorry love. Now, good old telecom, and we're based in South Wales, and
Lots of competition down there, by the way.
and we're gonna the cloud business. We're gonna do all these things, and I'm gonna take Phil Emanuel because he's brilliant. And I'm gonna do this, we do that. How much, when you're acquiring a business, is it something that is going to happen? You know it's going to happen. You trust in your business, or if you know that potentially is a risk. I mean, to you, Jay, when you're looking at it, the positions, would you factor in that? I mean, there must be a term for it for you there, like the birth of the business you bought. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, look, I think you've got a period of non-compete that you set. You know, that can be a period that is agreed between you all. There's got to be a fair period as well. And you've got that time to get to know those customers and build a better relationship with them and recontract them, whatever you need to do, right? And so if that owner does come back in, you know, yes, they may take some of those customers on it, but hopefully within that 3-year period or whatever, you build that relationship back up with yourself. And if you haven't, you could argue, is it their fault that you've lost that client, right?
Totally.
You know, that would be my argument as well. But at the same time, like for me, I was in comms and networks. Flotek were more about IT. So for me, it was that I didn't want to go back into what I was doing. I wanted to actually change and be something different. And so for us, comms is more of a secondary product within our portfolio.
I'm still doing that though.
We're still doing it.
The last thing really for me on this, because this is, I mean, M&A and things like that, it's only going to increase. So actually in the connectivity space, in terms of my view, where there's mergers, access to funds is a challenge, funders owning different carriers say, well, actually, our assets worth this, well, if we cut together, we might be worth more together. And you've seen a recent Netomnia pending purchase, where the list price is kind of £2 billion, but I'm sure with
It
yours.
was always going to happen in altnets, so wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see, so obviously you two are not specific into that area, but from commentary in terms of that space, where you've seen cleans and billions come in probably over the last 10 years, it's almost unprecedented really in terms of the private active cash that's come into that sector from few providers to multiple. Do you see a consolidation massively? Yeah, the connectivity side.
Yeah, look,
If you were in there, is that the sort of approach you would be like?
I think it's difficult. I think with altnets, there is going to be a massive consolidation, as you said, and we've seen it in South Wales. We've got a provider, Augie, which invested millions and millions, went from sort of 20, 30 people to 300 people overnight, right? Taking lots of good people from South Wales, and all of a sudden now they're doing mass culls of people because they didn't hit the targets that they were set out for. The gold rush has stopped, and so naturally, I think at some point somebody's going to come in and buy that asset, and it'll be a consolidation of altnets, and eventually I think we'll end up with a Virgin and a BT again, and they'll just buy up the altnets. That's my opinion of it.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. You speak to some of the altnets, I think they've all got that sort of same vision. I think it has to. I think with the amount of investment going in, and like you say, there's too much money going in for them all to survive. I don't see how each of the individual altnets can work within their central areas. It has to. They will come under larger umbrellas. I just think that's a natural progression of what it has to do.
I mean, the sort of MSP space, it's interesting because you've got sides that now Planet Technology starting to make use, maybe not, who knows? Historically, there was other businesses would acquire on a really regular basis. In not doing that anymore. Do you see more larger businesses like the Flotek, Connect starting moves where the acquisitions in this space ran us up? Are there lots of businesses now who are kind of the owners are getting to a stage where they started in 2020, 1995, and they're kind of wanting to exit to retire and those sort of things? What's the sort of market like, just as a kind of a high level? I'll go with you, Jay. But
Okay. It's really active at the moment. There's a lot of comms companies up for sale, especially obviously with the whole analog switch off coming at the end of the year. So there's a lot of business owners who are absolutely terrified of what their business is going to look like in less than 12 months.
Yeah.
And they can't understand from a valuation point of view that I'm not going to pay several years forward when that revenue isn't going to exist. And so, what they've sat on for years is sort of starting to come to an end for them, and the business will decrease naturally, right? So there's a lot of comms business for sale. There's a lot of IT businesses for sale, but for us, it's about being really picky about what we value and only really buying some really good businesses. So when we were smaller, we had to buy businesses that maybe we wouldn't buy today. But as we've grown as a business and matured, we've realized what it is we want, what is it we don't want. And so actually, I'd rather grow through more controlled and a more mature approach than just sort of buying up everything and anything.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. Completely agree with that. Yeah. There's a lot of, especially on the comms side, we don't do a lot of IT. IT might be one of those areas that we acquire into.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the comms business that we talk to that are, I wouldn't say scared, but they're a little confused as to where the market is and where it's going to. They've got this old legacy base, and a lot of it's getting switched off. Quite sure how they transition from that traditional PBX type environment to that SaaS model. So there's a lot of confusion and worry as to where. So they're the ones that are looking to Jetson out and move on before it completely disappears.
I suppose one of the things is that they're lucky to have firing. We've got that legacy. They'll need to demonstrate to gents like yourselves that they have a boss they have a structure and how they're going to go through that over the coming years, and they also factor in any sort of deviation. So thank you so much, Jay.
Very welcome.
Mr. Rogers.
Pleasure. Thank you, Jay.
Can I just say, I love your go fast stripe in the hair as well.
I wish you had it when we did the cooking, by the way. Yeah, that would have been brilliant.
This is what I get. So normally we do these episodes, and so you follow. I'm trying to,
Bring your youth back, aren't you?
I'm trying to intellectually move from 9 IQs to 12 there too, and
This strike will definitely do it, mate.
makes me down.
Definitely do it.
It's been a pleasure, and he's a million different things to a million people, but I just feel really fortunate in this position to have 2 people that go through that entrepreneurial buying businesses,
The sort of pitfalls, there's some real value there, I thought, in terms of earn-out advisors, models or types of businesses that you're looking at. Obviously, if you are looking to sell your business in our space, then maybe these guys would be interested. I definitely wouldn't, so I would fail the credit. But thank you all very much. Cheers, Clay.